The issue that needs to be answered is, to what extent are you all doing? In light of the fact that you have returned to the channel, we would like to use this opportunity to express our gratitude to you. One of the things that we are going to investigate today is a circumstance that has caused a community to be shaken to its very foundations. A portion of our investigation will be devoted to this. Because this matter is so tremendously distressing, the community has been really concerned about it. This is because of the fact that it is so disturbing. The author of Savanna Greywind explores a variety of subjects such as love, hope, and the incomprehensible evil that lies dormant beneath the surface of the story in the novel Savanna Greywind. The remainder of the narrative is centered on these topics as topics of conversation all throughout the narrative. The year 1995 marked the year that Savanna Greywind was born. She was born in Burke County, which is situated in the state of North Dakota. When she was born, she became the center of attention. Both of her parents, Norberto and Joe Greywind, were responsible for bringing her into the world with them. It was a collective effort on their part that led to her birth. They were the ones who were responsible for her coming into being. In this case, they are the ones who are responsible. The beginning of her romantic engagement with Ashton Maiden occurred when she was only 15 years old, and it was a connection that would continue to exist and become stronger over the duration of their time spent together through the course of their time together. They were in a relationship during this time period. During the course of their time spent together, they are going to spend all of their time in each other's company. After Savanna and her family relocated from Fargo to Spirit Lake Reservation, it became clearly clear that Savanna had a strong connection with the natural world and that she had an unwavering passion for animals, particularly horses. This devotion was especially demonstrated by the fact that she enjoys riding horses. This transpired after Savanna and her family relocated to the Spirit Lake Reservation in the state of Tennessee. The fact that Savanna had moved to the Spirit Lake Reservation made this point extremely evident to everyone observing the situation. Savanna's life was full with opportunities. She was making plans to become a nurse, she was expecting her first child, and she was building a future with Ashton. All of these things were happening at the same time. Savanna made the most of each and every one of the opportunities that were made available to her. Savanna was presented with a great deal of opportunities throughout the course of her life. We would like to offer an invitation to you to accompany us on this journey as we continue our research into the many dimensions of Savanna's life, beginning with the happy moments and finishing with the terrible events that led to her loss. We would want to begin with the cheerful moments and end with the tragic events. At first, we will be able to enjoy the happy moments, and then we will go on to the dreadful events that will take place. Remember to check back soon because you won't want to miss the next exciting part in this gripping story, so make sure you don't forget to do so. Doing so will ensure that you don't miss out on the next thrilling chapter. Let us now go on to the life of Brooke Cruz, a lady whose journey would happen to connect with Savanna Greywind's in a manner that would definitely be a horrific experience by any stretch of the imagination. Before we move on to the following issue, which is the history of Brooke Cruz, let us get that out of the way as quickly as possible. Some of the factors that contributed to the difficulties that Brooke encountered when she was a youngster included the fact that she was born and reared in the Bradenton suburb of Sarasota, which is situated in the state of Florida. The location of Sarasota can be found in the state of Florida. She relocated to the house that she presently resides in with her mother, Paula Nelson, and her 7 siblings as a result of the dissolution of the marriage that her parents had been in. There was not a single other child residing in the house save her. She was the only child there. Although the writings in Brooke's notebook gave the impression that she had a satisfactory quality of life, she had a challenging childhood that left her with scars that will remain with her for the rest of her life. These wounds will continue to affect her. For the rest of her life, she will carry these wounds with her constantly. When Brooke was still a small child, she started exhibiting behaviors that were cause for concern and indicated the presence of a problem. These behaviors showed that there was a problem. It was clear that there was an issue based on these behaviors. There was a relationship between the individual's connection with mysticism and their interest in the killings that were committed by serial murderers. Both of these connections demonstrated that the individual possessed a more hazardous component of their nature. That both of these interests were pointing in the direction of accuracy was something that was abundantly evident. She took the decision to obtain a degree in criminal psychology when she reached her adult years with the intention of gaining an insight of the minds of the people to whom she was drawn. Her goal was to acquire this information so that she could better serve those folks. The ultimate goal that she had set for herself was to achieve this realization. Throughout the course of her life, Brooke has embarked on a number of romantic partnerships. She has been in a number of different relationships. In addition to that, she has been married twice and has contributed to the birth of 9 children. In addition to that, she has taken care of 9 grandchildren or granddaughters throughout her life. Her romantic relationships were filled with challenges, which often included conflict and instability with her lovers. Her romantic relationships were fraught with issues. Her romantic connections were difficult to navigate. There was a regular pattern of heart-shaped starts, which were subsequently followed by intellectual games and emotional conflict, according to the journals. This pattern was followed by emotional conflict. The manner in which this pattern was presented was consistent throughout the entire presentation. Brooke took the decision to start a new chapter in her life by moving to Australia and getting married to Andrew Murray. She did this with the intention of doing things differently and beginning a new chapter. Over the course of that time period, they have been cohabitating. Due to the fact that the marriage only lasted for a period of 6 months rather than a longer period of time, it was clear that she had a troubled history. Her troubled past was reflected in this behavior of hers. In addition to the fact that she lied about her documentation in order to get permanent status, she may have been susceptible to the possibility of being arrested at the conclusion of her time spent in Australia. The commencement of a meeting with William Hohen that would later prove to be an important occurrence in the future was taking place at that moment. The beginning of this gathering was marked by Brooke's arrival back in the United States. When Brooke was in the year 2012, she had the misfortune of having the experience of coming into contact with William Hohen, a guy who had a well-known reputation for assaulting children. Brooke was extremely unfortunate to have this experience. A healthy beginning was there in their relationship, but over the course of time, it gradually deteriorated into codependency, addiction to substances, and a reduction in the quantity of mental health care that they received on a regular basis. The fact that they continued to be together in spite of everything that had occurred was quite remarkable. The consumption of opiates and alcohol was a component that contributed to the development of codependency, which finally led to the breakdown of a relationship that had been originally pleasant and joyful up until that point. She was forced to switch occupations on a regular basis and faced an increase in the difficulty of her relationships as a consequence of the deterioration of Brooke's mental state. In addition, she was forced to move around more frequently. Additionally, she was compelled to leave her previous position. The deterioration took a big turn for the worst as a result of the fact that the individual who was involved in the custody issue was unsuccessful in their efforts. The fact that Brooke's mental and physical health have been deteriorating at a rate that has been growing over the course of time is quite concerning. It was a challenging phase that was characterized by the accusations of assault that were made against William in the year 2016, as well as the diagnosis of gallbladder disease that Brooke received. Both of these events occurred at the same time period. The year in which each of these occurrences took place was the same. Throughout the course of her life, she was presented with a lot of problems, which led to an increase in the quantity of psychological study that was carried out on the more unpleasant aspects of human nature. This research was carried out in response to her experiences. Brooke was experiencing emotions of depression as a consequence of the collapse of the custody arrangement that she had in place in the year 2014. She stated that this particular time period was a turning point in her life and that she had lost control over her impulses and behaviors during this time period. She also stated that she had an epiphany at this time period. In addition to this, she mentioned that as of this time period, she had lost control of her life. A diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder was made for her as a result of the fact that she had been exposed to this particular incident. In this examination, we will be looking at the awful events that took place as a result of the tragic events that took place when Savanna's life and Brooke's life came into contact with each other. These occurrences were directly related to the unfortunate events that took place. Brooke Cruz's youth in the Bradenton, Sarasota district of Florida was marked by early indications of a challenging road, despite the fact that she was born into a household that gave the impression of being completely typical. She had signs of a fascination with criminal actions and an abnormal interest in the minds of serial killers at an early age, despite the fact that she was born into a household that gave the impression of being typical. This was the case during her childhood. She was also fascinated by the minds of people who committed serial murders. It was a sign that Brooke would be more likely to conduct crimes in the future, which was a precursor to a more gloomy future for her. This was a signal that she would be more likely to do crimes. On this voyage, the focus was on Brooke's challenging relationships, which included marriages and children. These connections were the primary point. Furthermore, this journey was characterized by times of instability as well as emotional difficulties. Instability and emotional difficulties were the defining characteristics of the route, which was extremely stormy. After having a brief marriage to Andrew Murray in Australia, Brooke transported herself back to the United States, so laying the groundwork for the terrible events that would proceed to take place in the future. Brooke's life had a tremendous transformation as a result of a chance meeting with William Hone. In the end, this encounter led to the formation of a relationship that was characterized by sentiments of codependency and dysfunction, which ultimately culminated in the dissolution of the partnership. This occurrence served as the motivation that finally culminated in the development of the relationship. Brooke faced with issues that were related to her mental health, in addition to the collapse of her relationship with her boyfriend. She was also had to cope with the ramifications of a custody battle that she had sadly lost, which added an extra layer of difficulty to her dilemma. In addition, she was forced to deal with the implications of the battle. Brooke's desire to have a child became a driving element, and as a result, she deceived William and pretended to be pregnant in order to prevent their relationship from falling apart. For the purpose of preventing the dissolution of their relationship, this action was taken. In an effort to prevent their relationship from deteriorating further, this step was taken. The custody dispute had a tremendous impact on Brooke's life, and it was this disagreement that served as the foundation for the sad events that took place on that fateful day in August of 2017. While Brooke was meticulously planning and carrying out a heinous murder, she was driven by an awful desire to enter into a parental connection. This desire was the driving force behind her actions. It was this ambition that served as the driving force behind her defiance. The intensity of her desire to have a child reached its highest point at this very moment, and it was at this very instant that she began to take action. The formation of a pregnancy, which turned out to be a devilish plot to keep William emotionally bound down, was finally responsible for a series of horrifying events that took place on August 19, 2017. As a result of the development of a pregnancy, these occurrences were ultimately brought about as a complete consequence. The tragic series of events that took place included a verbal altercation, a physical altercation, and the horrific removal of the unborn child from Savanna's womb. All of these occurrences were part of the unfortunate chain of events that took place. It is important to note that each and every one of these happenings took place simultaneously. Immediately after the events that took place, Brooke and William worked together in order to conceal the murder by disposing of the body and putting up an elaborate cover-up. In order to conceal the fact that the crime had been committed, this action was taken. More pain was endured by Savanna's family as a direct result of the police's initial lack of concern regarding Savanna's withdrawal from the scene. It was due to the fact that the authorities were unable to comprehend the gravity of the situation that they were dealing with that this scenario occurred. The additional searches that were carried out after the initial investigation led to the discovery of very little evidence, which made Savanna's family feel even more dissatisfied and brought to light the deficiencies that were present in the initial investigation. As a result of the surprising finding of a newborn in the apartment that Brooke and William shared, the investigation went in a direction that was not only unexpected, but also unexpectedly unanticipated. The unexpected turn of events finally led to the discovery of the truth regarding the circumstances surrounding Savanna's disappearance. Once it was established that Brooke and William were complicit in the commission of the crime, they were hauled into custody. This occurred as a result of the fact that it was discovered that they were participating. Confession would finally shed light on the gruesome facts surrounding the crime, which would ultimately lead to the case being concluded through the resolution of the case. As we continue to delve deeper into the legal proceedings and the aftermath of this terrible catastrophe, we strongly encourage you to stay tuned in throughout this process. I am appreciative of the consistent attention that you have provided. Brooke Cruz and William Hoeing, the two individuals who were accused of being responsible for the awful deed that resulted in Savanna Greywind losing her life, were the ones who were accused of being guilty for the crime. The wheels of justice started turning on them as soon as the charges that were brought against them were presented. Because of the actions that she had committed, Brooke Cruz was given a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. She was also compelled to face the repercussions of her actions, regardless of whether or not she was eligible for parole. Brooke Cruz was sentenced to life in prison without the parole possibility. Due to the fact that she was involved in the criminal act to a significant degree, it was reasonable that the severity of her sentence was proportionate to the seriousness of the offense. The correct course of action was to proceed in this manner. People who were there at the time of the announcement of the initial decision to acquit William Hoeing displayed a mixture of amazement and dismay at the news. Due to the fact that he was ultimately sentenced as a result of other legal actions that were pursued, this is evidence that justice was eventually accomplished. The choice that had been taken at the outset of the process was subjected to an attempt to be rectified within the scope of the court system. The third phase in the process was the filing of an appeal by William Hoeing, which occurred after the conclusion of the stage that came before it in the ongoing legal drama. After a period of time had passed, a revised sentence was handed down, which in turn had the consequence of ensuring that he would be held accountable for his part in the kidnapping and the plan. Both of these occurrences took place after the sentence had been communicated to the defendant. The Savanna Greywind case, which brought to light the shortcomings of the judicial system and, more importantly, the indifference of the police departments, generated an outcry from the general public when it was brought to their knowledge. The case brought to light the differences between the two. It was the fact that the case brought to light the deficiencies that served as the catalyst for this outcry against the situation. There is a likelihood that criticism could resonate throughout the communities, which will encourage the adoption of accountability and reform. A piece of legislation that is now commonly known as Savanna's Law was sponsored by Senator Heidi Heitkamp as a direct response to the tragic events that took place. Savanna's Law. In order to achieve the ultimate purpose of this piece of law, which is to eliminate violence against the bodies of Native American women, the legislation is intended to be put into effect. The act, which was passed with the intention of accomplishing that goal, was drafted with the intention of fostering collaboration between federal, state, and tribal authorities in order to engage in cooperative efforts to address systemic issues. This was the intention of the act. Norberto, Savanna's parent, gave a position that conveyed a great lot of passion regarding the unfair treatment of Native Americans in the legal system. This opinion was articulated from the perspective of Savanna. The assertion that he made was that indigenous people are treated in an unfair manner. According to the results of his investigation, he was able to shed light on the systemic challenges that indigenous people face while attempting to seek justice for their loved ones. This was made possible as a result of the findings of his investigation. Following the conclusion of the processes that were taking place in the courtroom, a group of folks gathered together to discuss about the tragedy that had taken place. As a sobering reminder of the requirement of systemic transformation, empathy, and understanding, the investigation into the Savanna Greywind case served as a sobering reminder of the need to redress crimes that were committed against vulnerable groups. The instance of Savanna Greywind was the one that brought this particular circumstance to the notice of the general public. We would want to take this opportunity to show our gratitude to you, the viewers, for your participation in our inquiry into the legal actions that have surrounding the Savanna Greywind case. We would like to thank you for your time and attention. The aid that you provide is of the utmost significance if we are going to be successful in bringing attention to issues of this nature. In order to ensure that you are the first to know about any impending changes or alerts that may take place, it is imperative that you do not underestimate the significance of using the subscription feature. In the event that we all collaborate in order to achieve this goal, the globe has the potential to transform into a place that is more equitable and just. For the time being, I would like to recommend that you proceed with caution until we catch up again. Thank you for watching. I recommend our other crime videos.